Safety's not about rules and injury rates. It's about making it personal. Like, there's no such thing as zero risk. So you got to manage it to the point where you can deal with it.
The way I categorize it is there's the safety professionals that are compliance focused.
Yeah.
And then there's the minority, the like super teeny tiny number of safety professionals that are people focused.
If you're going to be compliance focused, you're always going to be in the passenger seat on influencing the culture because you're going to be the one getting influenced versus in the driver's seat and influencing the work environment.
As a safety professional, you have, I believe, you have the ultimate platform to influence the business, to influence the leaders in their way they think and the decisions that they make in supporting the people. And you have a direct, no holds barred access to every level of the organization. What is going on, L&M family? I'm a pretty fortunate guy, and that fortune I get to share with the family here. I'm getting to introduce to you and learn more about Mr. Craig, international safety superstar.
Okay.
I connected with Craig on the LinkedIn. He posts some really thought-provoking, straight-up, real perspective about safety and, more importantly, about human beings, which is what, of course, sparked me to say, hey, I need to reach out to this man and see what we can do. He's the founder of Keep Safe Consulting. He served in the Canadian Army, so he's no slouch. He's another baller. We're lucky here. We got ballers on the show all the time. Studied at the University of Alberta. Published author. He published Influence, Its Leadership and Safety at the Sharp End. There it is. Yes. And I got questions about that title because I love it. I think it reminded me of the Depth Builder logo here. And if this is your first time here, you are listening to the Learnings and Missteps podcast, where you get to see how real people just like you are sharing their gifts and talents to leave this world better than they found it. I'm Jesse, and we are going to get to know Mr. Craig. Mr. Craig, how are you doing, good sir?
I'm doing good.
So before we hit record, you kind of spilled the beans. You're in the hotel, so you're road warrior traveling all over Canada, I'm assuming?
Mostly Western Canada. Lately, it's been Alberta. That's big enough, right?
That's plenty big. Yeah. I think being from the States, it's hard for me to understand how big it is, except now I've got super cool friends in Canada.
Alberta's it's like Canada's Texas.
There we go.
It's some of our oil and gas, and it's a big province. I drove up here to Fort Saskatchewan, north of Edmonton. It's, I think, 680 kilometers from my home, so 300 miles.
Oh, that's a nice drive. And you drove up that way?
Yeah, I drove this time. I did my vehicle for the job site I'm at.
Yeah. I appreciate you making the time to squeeze us in. I got a softball of a question, Craig.
Sure.
How do you define safety?
Oh, it's a tough one. It shouldn't be tough, right? You're just managing risk. Instead of saying, no injuries, that's a given, but safety is just managing the risk.
Yeah.
That's it, really.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
So when we hear risk, my brain says exposure. Like people exposing their bodies, their limbs, their eyes to damage. And so safety is minimizing that exposure?
Yeah. Exposure is part of it. The longer you're exposed, your chances of having something go wrong are there.
It increases the risk.
Yeah.
Got it. And so I mentioned that you served in the Canadian Army. I also know that you did some mountaineering. Did you do that when you were in the Army or
in the
post-Army?
Yeah. It's kind of how I got into the safety role. I was a soldier, so I was in the infantry. When I left the Army, I was a sergeant, an infantry sergeant. And the last couple of years in the summers, I was a mountaineering instructor. We got the Rockies right out our back door. We did a lot of that. And when I left the Army, one of the things I started doing was teaching high-angle rescue and confined space entry, rope technical rescue stuff in gas plants and refineries. So I kind of got into the safety field through training.
Okay.
So
what's mountaineering? Because my simple mind says I crawled up a mountain one day, so I was doing mountaineering, but it's probably not that simple. There's some more complexities to it, yeah?
Oh, yeah. We were doing rock face climbing, and we did quite a few rescues of people that got into bad positions where they didn't know how to get out of. So we did a lot of ice work and crevasse rescue and stuff like that.
Okay, so in the rescue, that wasn't like you jumping on a walkie-talkie and calling in a helicopter. What all do you do as a mountaineer when you're rescuing somebody? Because that sounds like intense, amazing, and also maybe scary.
Oh, potentially scary. Yeah. Yeah. You're rappelling down on a rope line to somebody who's either fallen or they're stuck on a mountain where this is too hard. Now I don't know what to do. So rappel down on ropes and then sometimes haul them back up or keep going down, lowering them down. Crevasse rescue, you're pulling them out of you got 2 sheets of ice and they're in the middle here and you're going down to get them. Yeah. Jeez. It's quite a deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
That's all technical stuff. Like if you think of the movie Cliffhanger, that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. With Stallone. That was a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you were doing that in the Canadian Army, and then you got into training for confined space entry and rescue.
Yep.
Because of the connection between the skill set you built in mountaineering.
It was so transferable. It was all knots and ropes and carabiners and harnesses. You're exposed at height. In a commercial setting, it might be a window washer on a skyscraper. You got to go get him because he's in a tough spot. Yeah.
Oh man, I bet that guy wasn't happy if he was stuck. I've seen him. I've never been in it. Okay, so then my guess is this. Mr. Craig, Mr. Young Teenage Craig, did not decide he was going to be a published author and run his own safety consulting firm. It just kind of happened. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was originally, when you were mapping out your life through high school and post-high school, what was the plan? What direction were you headed?
I, for some reason, always had an interest in the Army, in the military. My parents were both in the Air Force. That's how they met. So there was a bit of a connection there. And I met my wife when I was in the Army, and I was going to be a lifer. I was going to be a soldier right to the end. But then I became a dad. So that kind of changed things.
Got it.
I was in my late 20s, almost 30, when I decided I was going to make a change. We had 2 little kids at the time. And I thought, my kids didn't even like talking to me if they saw me packing away my stuff. Because back then, when I packed up my gear to go, I was gone for months. Yeah.
So they let you know, like, we don't like it that you're leaving us.
Like, just go away.
Be gone. You're doing it again.
Yeah. Oh. I thought I would try and make a change while I was young enough to do it. I tried a couple of things that didn't pan out because I assume the military is like this anywhere. You go in as a young kid and it's a lifestyle, not a job. So transitioning out, the military is really good at bringing young people in and molding them. And they're not so good at sending them the other way, which of course is why we have so many problems with our vets, both in the US and Canada and all over the world, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Like re-entry into civilian life is not...
Yeah. So the first couple of things you try, it doesn't work out. And then a guy I knew was looking for an instructor for high angle rescue. He knew I was looking for something. And that's kind of how it connected. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that like? Getting out of the military, pretty structured, pretty clear chain of command, pretty clear expectations. I'm assuming I've never been in the military. Coming into civilian life, was that shocking?
I was scared for sure. Because not only do you have all that structure, you're pretty protected too, right? You know what you got to do, But I don't know if it was shocking. It was different. You heard that phrase, you beat 50% of the people by just showing up. Well, you probably beat 80% of them if you show up on time. And of course, in the Army, hey, you better be on time, right? Yeah. So... And I heard this the other day, and it was brilliant. Do you know who Jocko Willink is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But before we go there, we're going to do the L&M family member shout out. And this one goes to Mr. Angel, who I got to meet. Is a construction management student at UTSA. Did a little shindig over there with my mentor and friend, Mike Kyman. Angel says this. He said, "This event helped me realize and remember how important it is to allow others to critically think for themselves rather than clipping their wings. as you said, we can wonder why we are not soaring with the eagles and surrounded with turkeys when we become the solutionizer as a leader that is always giving unsolicited advice and solutions to every problem. Angel, I'm glad that stuck with you because it was a problem I had for most of my career, never giving my people the space to leverage their autonomy, their agency, and their critical thinking because I was always giving them answers. So, folks, give Mr. Angel a shout out. And also, when you get a chance, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review or a 3-star review, whichever makes most sense to you. But when you leave me the comments, that's the ultimate because then I get to shout you out. And I actually know that somebody's listening just besides me.
So he had a phrase there where he said discipline equals freedom, right?
Yep.
And I think that's a good way to deal with when you come out of the structure of the Army, because the discipline gives you the flexibility to do what you need to do. It allows you to try stuff. And we've done some stuff, so you got a little bit of courage as well,
right,
to try stuff you haven't done.
Nice.
I think that's a perfect fitting. Discipline equals freedom to try stuff.
And the phrase is a little counterintuitive, right? Because sometimes discipline being this rigid, how should I say, caste situation.
Yeah.
But it's really not.
No.
It sets the conditions to be free and grow and learn and experiment and try.
Yeah.
I wish I knew that back in my 20s, Craig.
Oh, me, right? I'm glad I didn't have an iPhone and the internet when I was 20.
So speaking of the iPhones and the internet, I mentioned at the introduction that you and I connected via LinkedIn. What was that like? What led you to begin posting and engaging on social media?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Going back to that idea of discipline equals freedom, I was surprised. I could get up and give a speech, a presentation, training. And when I went to write my book, I felt I had some imposter syndrome, right? And I thought the only way to get over that is to get doing it and do more of it. Because I know, I really believe what I've been posting, because it challenges the status quo a little bit. So it's one thing to get up in front of a group of people and speak, but you start posting and putting it out there, and it's out there for the world to see, and it's out there forever. But I was surprised. I did not expect, where did that imposter syndrome come from? Look over here, needle, and hey, what if they don't like it? And so you just start posting, and then you get some people saying, hey, yeah, spot on. Thanks for saying this and for bringing it up and that kind of thing. And so I want to, as I transition, I do a lot of site work, which is good. There's a lot of safety speakers who aren't doing so much site work, and they disconnected from their, same with writers, they get disconnected from the people they're trying to influence. Now, in my business, I do probably 80 to 90% of my business revenue is from doing site work out on these construction projects. Currently, my clientele is all oil field industrial construction. And what I'm hoping to do is with the book, and again, why I publish so much on LinkedIn, is to start doing leadership workshops for the front line. That's kind of my target audience. That's why the subtitle in the book is it's leadership and safety at the sharp end, because there's some excellent leadership workshops and stuff out there, but their target audience seems to be middle management, upper management.
Yep.
And and we often in industry, and I think it's in all industries, we kind of set people up to fail when we take a guy or a girl who's excellent at their craft. Hey, we're going to make that the supervisor. Boom, we move them up to the supervisor, give them no training. They fail dismally, right?
Yes.
So I want to start doing some of that. The book is written as a bit of a hand guide more than just a lecture or anecdotes and stuff. It's got stories in it, but it's got exercises in it. And so my plan is to use that and do some half-day or one-day workshops and do some follow-up. I think that's also a missing link with people that take some leadership workshops, especially new leaders. There's no follow-up afterwards, some coaching. And that was, I think, one of the biggest things I got out of the Army was when you take a leadership course and you move off back to the unit, there's always somebody coaching you.
To continue the thread of that learning.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd like to do some of that and then keep doing some job site work so you stay connected with the audience you're trying to influence and then move them along. So
when you say site work, what does that look like?
Right now, it's up in the oil and gas installations. I'm doing some work at a gas plant right now, and they're getting ready to drill into a salt cavern and do some cavern storage. So instead of having tanks up on the ground, they have these salt caverns that are sealed, and they're down 2,000 meters into the ground. I was working up at another site further north where they take sulfur, which is a byproduct of processing oil and gas. So they make it so it's safe to transport. So it's all industrial construction. Some of it's new construction, some of it's modifying an existing facility and that kind of thing. And so I go up and help with hazard assessments. If there's incidents, we do incident investigations, see what actually happened. And I do a lot of coaching with, instead of doing safety rules, I work with the supervisors. Rules is part of it, but I work with the supervisors on how to be leaders and make their work site safe so that you're not just doing checkbox. Yeah, we've got this, we got that, hazard assessment stuff.
Check it out, hometowners. So Primo, he's a little bit embarrassed about like asking for some backup, some esquina. And so I want to hit you up and like if you're digging this content, pues give it un like, give it the stars or leave a comment, But if you really, really want to see Primo like get all chiflado, like for the reels, hit him up on the socials, Holmes. Like if you give him a comment in the socials and let him know what you thought about the thing, pues he's going to light up. But only do it if you mean it because, you already know how Primo is. Se cree mucho el cabrón. So if you could do that, if you could leave a comment or a rating or the stars or whatever, that would be cool, man. So what surprises or awakenings have you had in working with leaders and helping them understand their responsibility or contributions to the safety mindset?
I think some of the most successful work I've had doing that is changing the mindset of being in charge. It's not that you're in charge as you have people under your charge that you have to take care of and make sure they get home.
So what's the difference? I love this.
You're responsible for them. One of the first things to do is I do a lot of talk. I even have a chapter in the book about stop saying safety is number one, because it's not.
Oh, whoa, right? Whoa, hold the horse.
So I get a lot of people going, what? And it's not that you don't want anyone to get hurt, but the company is doing some new construction on an existing facility so they can make more money. The contractors got the job so they can make more money. And the workers, they do the job so they can pay the rent and fill the mortgage or the freezer. And it's okay to say that we're there to make money. You got to get past this nonsense of saying safety is number one, because as soon as you say that and schedule's pushed and something goes behind and then we start eroding that.
Yes.
And so I think I have some impact because a lot of safety people won't say that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And when you're the safety guy and you're coming up and you say, like, stop saying that. One of the things I try to say a lot is when you're a leader, you can't talk your way to something you behaved your way into. So you got to get out there, you got to connect, you got to see what the drivers are with your workers and see what's going on with their head. They got a sick one at home, are they present, right?
Yep.
So that's what I mean about when they're in your charge. Your job is to take care of them. You don't have to teach them how to be a pipe fitter, a welder, an electrician, or a plumber. They are already there. They're the craftsmen. Just get out of their way. Let them get to it. Break down the barriers so they can get their work done, right?
Yes.
So
I heard one friend of mine say, here's the deal. My teams, install teams out there, the vehicles on the road, and they need to get to where we need to get. My job as a manager and leader on the job site is to make sure they have all green lights. I was like, dude, yes.
Exactly.
Like, clear the road for them and let them do and make sure you're taking care of them.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like that, the idea, because I spent a little bit of time as a safety professional, like super small period of time. And I asked myself the question of like, what is safety? How do I define safety? And I could only come up with it's taking care of people, being responsible for the people in my charge, to use your language, right? Being responsible for them and to them to facilitate them doing what they needed to do and not getting hurt or injured or
Yeah,
any
like that's a given,
general
right?
damage.
You want to make sure everyone gets home and not
Yep.
hurt and there was some jingle in their pocket, but those are given. Safety, it's when you hear it, it's often, no, we've got rules and stuff, and we do for sure, but it's not about that. It's about the people. I had a bit of an epiphany. I was probably an intermediate safety person by now, like experience wise and knowledge and stuff. About 7, 8 years into my career, I've been doing it for, God, 26 years.
Woo, baby, yeah, you got some time.
But and I started to not drink the Kool-Aid. I started questioning things. Like we would focus on injury rates, and I always used to wonder. I don't think Bob the Builder cares whether your frequency rate for your injury is 0.1 for 100,000 man hours, right? But he probably cares about his friend Joe who might get hurt. So I stopped kind of drinking the Kool-Aid, and a turning point for me was, this is going to sound crazy, but I was with the company, made 5 fatalities one year, right?
Oh my God.
These job sites were all really remote, like way out into northern Alberta, northern Canada, and they were all single vehicle accidents. These guys were driving to the work sites or from the work sites on their way home, and they were all ejected out of the vehicles. They were single vehicle rollovers. Guys tossed out, and they either hit something or the vehicle hit something when it was rolling over them. And 3 of them were married, and a couple of them had kids. So we were on this massive campaign. Man, a lot of really hard work went into this. We had presentations, and we were traveling with directors and VPs of the company. It was a big oil and gas service company. Yeah. And as the safety guys, we were driving these guys around to the different remote work sites. And I was up in an area, I think it's called Tommy Lakes. So if you picture Alberta and British Columbia on a border, and then the Northwest Territories up here, like we're up right here. Like a snowball's throw from the Arctic Circle. So we're remote.
I was just going to say, that sounds really cold.
Oh, it was. It was wintertime. We were doing this. And
geez.
we get up there. We're supposed to give this presentation. Have you ever heard the phrase death by PowerPoint?
Oh, yeah.
You take a PowerPoint slides and you print them, and you're going to review these with an industrial work crew out on a work site. It's not going to go well.
Yeah, whatever, man.
So,
this is going to be good for my little camping fire.
I was asked if I could do the presentation. I'm outside the crew truck. They had one of them suburban one-ton crew trucks, and they had a crew truck that would go from the work site to the camp, the industrial camp they're staying in. And it was like an ugly winter road. I wasn't supposed to be doing the presentations. It was the presidents and the vice presidents and directors.
Oh, yeah.
But I get up there and this guy says, I hate public speaking. Can you do this? I didn't even look at the presentation because I wasn't going to be speaking, right? And
right.
I'm looking through this PowerPoint and going through the slides and I'm thinking, oh, these suck. This is terrible. And so it's like death by PowerPoint on steroids, right? And yeah. I happened to look to my right at the crew truck. There's no one in the truck and the seatbelts are all connected, right?
So they're clipped in.
Yeah.
And nobody's in the truck.
Nobody's in the truck. So they can get in the truck and then they can go where they're going to go. They don't have to listen to the dinger of the seatbelt warning, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And they had an ugly winter road. There was a ravine on one side and a hill on the other. So I thought, oh, this is not good. I tossed the presentation in the trash on my way into the meeting. And I asked the guys, how many of you guys wear your seatbelt in the crew truck? I said, it's okay. I said, no one's going to be in trouble. When I drive from this site down to 50 miles or 80 kilometers to the next site, you're going to do what you're going to do anyway. So no one's going to be in trouble. I said, 15 of you guys are married. 11 of you got kids. So I talked about these 5 guys whose family had to move on. I said, so here's the deal. When you're driving down that road back to camp and you slide off the hill into the ravine, you're at minus 30 degrees. You're probably going to die. I said, if you're okay with somebody else raising your kids and sleeping with your wife, don't put your seatbelt on.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that was the reason I say it was an epiphany for me was I had a couple guys go, Craig, you're an asshole. I said, maybe, but that's what the reality of it.
Yes.
And he goes, no, I said, I never looked at my safety that way. I always looked at it as a rule and management's telling us this, but doing that. And so that's when I started thinking safety's not about rules and injury rates. It's about making it personal. Like there's no such thing as zero risk. So you got to manage it to the point where you can deal with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I imagine when you like, it was clear, like it clicked. You looked in the truck, you saw, I said, oh, that's the largest contributing factor. Here's the reality if something were like they take on the risk.
Yeah.
So it became very clearly like, oh, duh. And then you just forget the PowerPoint. They could
Yep.
use that paper for something else.
Yes.
Here's what your decision could create. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Bam, 2x4 between the eyes. So in the moment, you're like, oh, this, I can really connect with people on a human level.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it sounds like from that point, you said, okay, from here forward, this is how I'm going to do it. Now, leading up to that, it was the risk assessments, the box checking, the pre-test safety plans, whatever, all of those words out there.
Yeah. Yeah. All the words. Yeah.
Right. So all your colleagues were still in that same bucket. What was that like, knowing that, man, my perspective is totally different than what we've been taught, than what we've studied, than what the corporations are completely bought into?
Yeah.
What was going through your head? Did you see friction in your future?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My boss at the time, like I said, this was a time when I wasn't so much a novice. I was kind of an intermediate, but you're right at that point where you start to question things like, does this add value? So I would ask questions like they'd come up with an initiative, for example, and I would say things like, does this make it better for the guy out on the tools?
Mm.
Oh, you're being difficult. No, I want to know, right? Because we have to sell it. And so my boss was like a safety cop. He was like rules and authority. And I said, that's not going to get you anywhere, man. So I was out at a job. I was sent out to do kind of, they call them inspections, but really that's part of it. But you'd go interact with the crew and figure out what's going on. And I get out there and it had rained. And so the ruts in the mud are like knee deep.
Oh, yeah.
I totally expected to not get a call or to get a call to not come out. So my first thinking, man, these guys did good. They didn't break nothing. The ruts from the tires are like up to my knees. It's impressive that they could do this. So they were busy. When I got there, I introduced myself to the supervisor and I said, well, I'll go do a couple of things I got to do and maybe we could talk to the crew afterward. And it was funny. You remember in those situations where the mud's picking up on your boots and your boots are getting heavier and heavier?
Oh, yeah.
I was walking between the two buildings and there was a cable going from one to the other, like a bonding cable. Tried to step over it and my boot hit it. And I thought, oh, here we go. I'm going to fall into the mud and the safety guy's got a face full of mud.
Oh, they're going to love it. Yeah, yeah.
But when my boot hit the cable, it came out of the connection. So I thought, oh. So I went around and checked all the connections and I went to the supervisor. And this supervisor, he was your quintessential tough nut oil field or construction guy. Like whatever's in here is coming out here and there's no filter.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to have a few expletives.
Yep.
So I asked him, I said, hey, I can go and fix the connections. The bonding connections are all loose. You guys are busy. I'll tighten them. And he looks at me like, what? I said, I can't find the wrench. So I'll tighten them up.
Can you give me a wrench? Yeah, you were asking him for a wrench and he's like, what the hell?
Yeah. And then I said, look, when we have the meeting with the crew, let's talk about static electricity because we just had a fire on another site where static electricity ignited the rig tanks on a drilling rig. The crew had put it out, but still it was static electricity that started. And I said, you guys are pulling pipe out of the well. That's important, right? He goes, oh, yeah, definitely. So we talked to the crew and talked about how static electricity happens and talked about the importance of bonding. Like the guys had made the connections, but they just didn't tighten anything down.
Right.
And that supervisor says, I had to write a report. Like if there's any deficiencies from an inspection, you would put it on that. And this guy, he says, can I write on this? I said, yeah, sure. So he writes. It was humbling because he says, finally, a safety guy that can come to this job site anytime. He writes that on the report.
Wow.
And then I got thinking, oh, my boss is going to see that.
Oh,
he says to me,
he's saying, come on, Craig, we'll take you anytime. And your boss didn't say you're doing something wrong.
It turns out they kind of got cross-threaded somehow a few times. And he says, I said, yeah, this ought to be good. My boss ain't going to like that. He goes, your boss is a freaking asshole. He says.
Yeah.
And sure enough, a couple of weeks later, he sees that. And he goes, what's this? I said, hey, I don't know. I told him what happened. I said, maybe you got cross-threaded with this guy. I don't know. I said, he actually says to me, you were just a pushover and you didn't do your job out there.
Mm.
I said, well, you can look at it that way, or you can look at it and say, maybe, just maybe, one of your people had some impact today. And then I walked away. Yeah, I was a sergeant in the Army. I'm not going to be intimidated by this little dude, right? So anyway, the funny story is, as I was walking back, clearly annoyed, back to my office, an operations manager that I'd worked with in the past at another company called me. He was at a new drilling company, said they're looking for a safety manager. I said, oh, really? And I walked back and gave my resignation.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I became a safety manager, and I got to try a lot of the stuff that I talk about as a leader. And this one guy I worked with, he was a VP. He'd be like he was the COO of the company. His name's Randy Hawkins. This was one of my best bosses ever worked for.
Wow. Yeah.
And so as the safety manager, I reported to the COO, and he said to me, I didn't know we could do safety this way. This is like excellent. I thought, we're onto something here. So one of the things that led to me writing the book was I'd give speeches and presentations and stuff. And a couple guys go, hey, man, you got to write some of this stuff down, Craig. And I wonder. And so that was the beginning of maybe I should look at doing a book. And how would I write a book that? So it's really more of a book about leadership and influence than it is a safety book. It's got a safety theme to it. But that's all safety is. Whatever's going to be successful for you as a leader, no matter where you are in the food chain, is going to make you successful influencing safety. Because that's all you're doing is you're influencing. We don't need more rules. There's lots of those. And I think the mistake a lot of people make in the safety field is they go to a tradesman, like a builder or whatever he is, a welder, somebody who's been around a long time. And we make the mistake of trying to tell them how to do their job in their craft.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's a whole bunch there. And I applaud you for having the courage to do that. And then I think the world just does that, right? You have this awakening. Then you have a kind of awesome experience on site. You actually helped, like you didn't leave a list of critiques.
Right. You
helped, got a good note from the site leader, pissed off your boss, got a new job offer. Like it all worked out. Like,
it did. Yeah.
But what I think is most important is that you had the courage to say, no, I'm going to do it differently.
Yeah.
Right. So much so that you had this COO like said, I didn't know we could do safety this way. And in my head, there's a distinct difference between compliance. The way I categorize it is there's the safety professionals that are compliance focused.
Yeah.
And then there's the minority, the like super teeny tiny number of safety professionals that are people focused. How do we make it better for the people? How do we serve the people versus the compliance thing? And so I got a question. I took I can't remember, some training. It was a week-long safety training because I was in a safety role. And I remember sitting in that training. It was about 20 some odd people. I was in Minnesota, kind of close to y'all, and it was colder than I like. I don't even know how cold it is up your way.
Well, I think Minnesota is like south of Saskatchewan and Alberta. So yeah, we get a lot of the same weather.
Yeah. So it was cold. And I remember sitting in there, and it was me and two other gentlemen. We were like the outcasts. We were the weirdos that were asking questions about influence and leadership. And the majority of the people in there wanted to know, what is the rule? What is the consequence? Where is the page that I can cite this violation? What's the maximum that we can, like, super compliance focused. And me and the other two guys, we're talking about different things, about collaborating with the leadership and getting involved hands-on with the trades. And can you do this sort of thing? And I'm looking, and the rest of the guys are like, they're like, could y'all please just shut up? Because y'all, we don't care. So anyways, fast forward, I'm talking to the guys at lunch and whatever. And I'm asking them, okay, so you're like the head safety guy for your company. Yes. And these were all different framing companies, roofing companies, general contract, like all construction. Almost all of them, with the exception of one. One guy was there because he had a pretty damn significant handicap injury. And
Oh,
the
yeah.
company said, hey, how about you lead our safety goal? Because you got a great story. And he did. Like his whole attitude changed and whatever. Everybody else, their boss said, hey, I want you to be the safety guy. And they're like the head safety person for the company. And so in that moment, so here's my question. Like in that moment, what I thought I saw was like my boss, when they recruited me, they were explicit. They said, we want you to help us transform our safety culture. We want to have a more people focused experience. We want to be less compliance driven and more people focused. I said, hell yeah, let's go. Everybody, like those other guys that were there, their boss said, we need a safety guy because we got to do something to improve our insurance rates. And they picked compliance focused people and put them in a safety role. So, man, that's a long way to ask the damn question. I think, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are, like there are so many safety professionals that are 100% singularly focused on filling in the paperwork and checking the boxes and guarding against liability. And I think it's because it's a reflection of what their bosses, the decision makers within the company.
Yep.
I think it's a reflection of their view of what safety is and can be. What do you think?
I think you're onto something there. Compliance is an easily measurable thing. The rules say this and this. Are we doing this and this? Bang, simple. But you're only going to you'll never get beyond mediocre if you're focused on compliance.
Say it again, Craig. Say it again.
Because if you think of standards, you got a company that's failing, they're down here, and the rules bring you to this level. So you're going to compliance and you're going to get there, but you're not going to sustain anything. You're going to always be mediocre. You're still going to be hurting people. You're still going to have rules broken because if you're compliance focused, you're going to pencil whip stuff. We did all this stuff. Boom. Let's go to work. And so you're kind of playing the short game versus the long game. There's always a culture, right?
Yes.
But if you're going to be compliance focused, you're always going to be in the passenger seat on influencing the culture because you're going to be the one getting influenced versus in the driver's seat and influencing the work environment. I have to speak this language, but I don't like it. There's culture, not safety culture, right? Because you're not going to have a really good safety culture on one side with a really bad work environment on the other, or a culture, right? It's just going to be bad. Right? What's the other one? Safety leadership. There's just leadership. There's not safety leadership. There's leadership. But that's the terms we have in the industry, so I use them. But really, if you just take a people-focused approach and make sure we've got the guys set up to succeed and taken all the barriers down so they can get their job done, then yeah, we're going to make a difference. But if you're compliance-focused, you're not going to sustain anything. You're going to get to mediocre. You're going to stay there. You might have a little pocket of excellence every now and again, but you won't sustain it. It'll fade back down.
I love that. If you're compliance focused, the best you can expect is mediocre.
Yeah.
Son of like that.
Because like if you think of OH&S standards, whether you're in Canada or the US, those rules in OH&S are written because someone got hurt or killed.
Yep. They're minimum. Right? Yep.
So if you're only ever achieving compliance, you're just getting above an injury, right? You're going to be mediocre and that's all you're going to achieve. Is it going to be easy to achieve?
Oh, yeah. Not killing people. Wow. Yeah. That's an accomplishment? Yeah. Like, it's not.
Like we have.
Oh, my goodness.
So one of the things that's happened, and this is where we need to speak with leaders on, is in just about all industries, we've gotten pretty good at reducing the injury rates and to some degree the severity of the injuries. Were you ever taught that triangle where you have so many injuries or behaviors would lead to so many things, which would eventually lead to fatality? If our injury rates are dropping and the severity is dropping, then there should be less fatalities, right?
Sure, yeah.
But there isn't. In Canada, like in Alberta, for example, we have the National Day of Mourning every April. In the States, they call it Workers' Memorial Day. It's on the same day. It's on the 28th of April.
Yep.
If you look at the numbers, so in Alberta, where I'm at, we average 160 work fatality a year. And it's been like that for 15 years, maybe 158, 166. It's just like that. Across Canada, it's been 900 to 1,000 workers a year for 15 years. In the States, I believe it's 5,000. your population's, what are you, 300 million people? Like Canada, we're only 40 million people. So,
Okay.
but you can go to any region. You can go to the UK, you can go to Australia. It's the same thing. The number's going to be different, but the change is not, right?
So it's
So
pretty flatlined, the number of deaths
it's
per
been
year.
flatlined. And so you would think if that triangle is actually true, we would have
That
less,
number should come down.
right? But there's a gap there somehow. And so we need to get better at reducing the fatalities. One of the things that's happened recently, this has never happened before, at least on record, is in Alberta, occupational cancer is now one of the number one killers. It's like asbestos and stuff like that. And so I got looking at that. When Canada was in Afghanistan with the American military, we were there, 20 years, something like that? In the time that Canada was there, we lost 128 soldiers in combat.
In combat.
In combat, 128 in 11 years. We have 160
in construction, in going to work every year. So, Craig, well, first, L&M family, you don't have to be a safety professional to appreciate what Craig is talking about, because you're talking about, you already said it, right? You took not safety leadership, it's leadership. It's not safety culture, it's culture. If you're only focused on compliance, the best you're going to achieve is mediocre. These are universal ideas that are applicable to any industry, any department. You know, it's interesting, and I don't know the answer, but I've been in my career in these like specialized roles, safety guy, lean guy, like these different things. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt. And the intent is to provide a better experience for the men and women that are out there doing the work. However, what I got to see over and over again is managers kind of behave. There's this unwritten rule that if there is a safety professional, that means they don't have to worry about safety. More specifically, they don't have to have any of the hard conversations related to safety, because the safety professional will do that, or the QA QC person will do that, or the lean person is going to do that. I worked with, this was back when I was a foreman, I think maybe even early superintendent. We had a safety professional, and that guy just, oh man, he would piss me off. Like, even thinking about him just really, because here's the thing. As a safety professional, you have, I believe, you have the ultimate platform to influence the business, to influence the leaders in their way they think and the decisions that they make in supporting the people. And you have a direct, no holds barred access to every level of the organization. So it's like the role that if you, like me, if you're an influence freak, that role itself is the perfect role that can be super, super leveraged. The power that they have that maybe they're not aware of just goes wasted so often. Anyways, I'll start beating on that. But this guy, we had this process called MISOP, mentally install systems on paper. And so the idea is we'll peel our drawings apart, look at the work, get all up into the weeds. How are we going to execute it? Is it going to be scaffolding? What are we going to do? Like, just brainstorming, how are we going to approach the work? If let's bring the safety guy in and say, hey man, there's this thing right here. We're not exactly sure what the safe is. This is what we're thinking, but that's not going to work. It's a stairwell, blah, 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 blah. His response would be, that's y'all's job. And yeah, like that's, just imagine that every time we reached out to him to be a resource to help us mitigate the risk or design something to get as safe as we possibly can, his answer was always, that's y'all's job. Y'all are the professional. But he would come back around and boy, would he hammer us every time. Nope, you're in violation. These are the things you're not doing. It's like, okay, what can we do? Well, that's y'all's deal. And I'm like, what the hell are you here? Jeez, can you tell I'm having a flashback here? And it was like, and I've seen a bunch of, he's just the worst example, but I've seen so many safety professionals, the way they operate is they come in after the fact and critique you and make sure, like, did you do it? Somebody got injured. Okay. Or there was a near miss. Let me see your pre-task safety plan. Guess what? That task wasn't on the plan. Violation. Let me see. It doesn't solve anything and doesn't bust a grape in trying to help us make the work better. But by this point in the conversation, so there may be some safety people that are like, screw these guys. I'm confident that the L&M family out there is going to take some of these really simple, clear, and I'm going to make sure to clip out these punch in your gut points because they're that, and again, they're applicable in leadership and influence and serving people, period. Doesn't matter what department, what industry, they're universally applicable. Dang, you stuck around all the way to the end. And I hope the reason you stuck it like all the way through was because you were getting a lot of value out of the conversation. I always get at least one, most of the time, a handful of good nuggets, good ideas, good perspectives that I can take and apply into my life going forward. That's the whole point. I want to share that with you guys and also highlight the amazing people that they are. And I want to end this by saying, if you feel like you've been living out a script that was written for somebody else, and you feel like you're in the wrong skin, I know that life. And all I did was numb myself to make it through to another day, which if you're there, you know how hopeless that feels. I want to recommend that you check out Becoming the Promise You Are Intended to Be. The stories in this book will help you know that you're not alone. They're my personal stories, like the real stuff that I went through, and I'm sharing them because it helps keep me sober. It helps me contribute my gifts and my talents in service to others. It helps me turn my failures, my shame, my embarrassment into something useful and positive. So check it out. Be kind to yourself, be cool, and we'll talk at you next time. Peace.